Hey folks, how's it going? So before I start the video, I finally managed to get this home. This was made for me by a chap at the Minds IRL, given to me at the Minds IRL event. I'm afraid I can't remember your name because I'm terrible with names, but let me know and I'll pin your comment or something. But this is awesome. Thank you so much for making this. Right, cost me £1,000 to get back to the UK, or $1,000 to get this back, because it's enormous, and I had to fill out weird forms, but it was worth it, and I'll make sure that it goes on my wall just behind the desk there, next to my bookcase of all of the interesting things people have given me. It definitely goes in the collection. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And speaking of things that I really appreciate, one of those other things is David Starkey going on Brendan O'Neill's podcast and telling it like it is. David Starkey is a British historian who is rather famous for speaking his mind and not being enthralled political correctness, and for demolishing feminist thoughts wherever he finds them. You can just Google him and Laurie Penny, for example, and he is easily one of our best in regards to what's happening here, because he is a Tudor expert, and he's an expert on the historical development of Britain and the political and constitutional development of Britain, and that really shines through in this podcast, because he can tell you exactly how these things came to be, why they came to be, and why it was important that they came to be. Unlike, honestly, almost everyone. For example, one of the great points that he makes is the idea of the sovereignty of Parliament, because Parliament won the English Civil War. Well, he points out, no, it didn't. That was Oliver Cromwell, a military dictator, that won the English Civil War. It was the army. Cromwell dismissed the Rump Parliament by saying you are I can't remember the exact words, but something like, you're a nest of blackguards and vipers and thieves who care nothing for nothing but money. For the love of God, go. Is there one virtue you've not sold, and one vice you have not adopted? Things like this. I should have got it up really so I could have read it to you. But it's very, very similar to how things are now, because the Rump Parliament refused to disband. They were, in his words, just after money, and that's actually exactly what our Parliament now is concerned about. The Remainers are concerned about their living standards. They're concerned about their access to avocado toast. It's not on principle on which they're doing any of this, so it's quite amazing how we've come around again, which is why we need more Lord Protector Boris memes. But no, he's right. He's obviously right, and it's interesting that no one else is thinking of it this way. I mean, I wasn't thinking of it this way until he pointed it out, and I thought, Christ, I'd bought into that propaganda too. Even though if I'd thought about it for more than 20 seconds, I knew that wasn't right anyway. I knew that. So why did I buy into that narrative? And this is why he's so important. He provides clarity of thought through very, very, very explicit and accurate recounting of what's happened. But what's best is the moral condemnation that he can lay out because of this. Because what he's laying out here is the moral good of the English political system. Because Parliament existed long before there was democracy in this country. Democracy in this country is like 100 years old. But we had representation in Parliament, not democratic, but representatives, the Commons, as it were. And we've had Parliament since like the 11th or 12th century. So it's a really old institution that's changed over a long period of time. And we've come to a position now that is fairly unprecedented, where the Parliament is actually in opposition to the people they're supposed to be representing. That's a problem. He blames the Queen for this. He says that it's her desire to be apolitical and stay out of trouble that has allowed this to brew. But the way it's being handled by the parliamentarians is disgraceful, and they are doing, in his words, treason. And it's hard to argue the case opposite. I mean, I did in the live stream yesterday. The idea that the Liberal Democrats will get Guy Verhofstadt up on a stage to tell them about the empire of Europe that they're going to be missing out on is treason. This isn't, and the way David Starkey puts it is an active, powerful, well-aligned, they're all on the same side, power block, enemy power block, opposition power block that we're currently negotiating against. The government of Britain is negotiating against this power block, and the Remainers are acting like a fifth column. They're acting in a treasonous manner because, as he puts it, and he's so right about this, they genuinely hate the country and the people who live in it. And it really goes back to what Orwell was saying in Notes on Nationalism about the sort of Anglophobic, internationalist, communist-loving sort of elites. They genuinely see the sort of parochial, small-minded Little Englanders as contemptible, absolutely contemptible, when in fact these are the people who are the foundation and the source of all of our political liberties. It's the idea of like individual self-government that really has produced the unbelievable success that is the English-speaking world, and this is what the bureaucratic, technocratic Remainer types have utter contempt for. They can't stand it. They love the corporatocracy, they love international bureaucracy, they love all of those things that make your life more difficult because they're the ones running them. They are the prime beneficiaries. They love the ordered world. They hate the chaos. But the chaos is where all the good stuff comes from. And to have a competitive system under the rule of law, which, and honestly, you have to listen to this podcast. Starkey lays all this out in such a magnificent way. The rule of law does not mean the rule of lawyers, and that's a great point. But the point of the rule of law is that we're all playing by the same rules, so we can all compete in a fair manner without doing unnecessary harm to one another. And so we can actually have an effervescent competitive society that blooms with innovation and productivity and wealth. And lo and behold, look what we've got. That's what we have. It's actually great. It's really, really good. And we should be proud of this. This is a moral good that we have created. He agrees with Guy Verhofstadt that the EU is an empire and that we chose to leave. We have to accept that. This has to be done. People opposing that are now treasonous. That's what that is. And I got into a Facebook argument yesterday where a friend of mine, she's Italian, and I love her dearly, but like she shared a petition to Parliament, so like, cancel Brexit. And I'm just like, dude, can you please stop doing this? Like, you're actually, I left a link to this podcast, you're actually doing damage to the political health of my country. And she's like, no, you can just scroll past. I was like, no, the fact that you're doing this is the problem. You are a foreigner. You are actively contributing to a constitutional crisis in my country because you don't like the way that people voted. That's not right. I think that's immoral. I think it's genuinely wrong. But the end of it as well was also amazing. And this is something I've been thinking about myself. I've written a script for a video called The Rational State that I hadn't actually put out yet, because I was thinking about this in conjunction with what Giovanni Gentili called the ethical state for the fascists. So it's the state with an ethical agenda to shape society, which is also what the socialists do, which is why they're so afraid of the fascists. They're basically the same. But the point is, the liberal state wasn't. The liberal state is the night watchman. And what he was concerned about is what I suppose we'll call the rational state, which is to divorce the idea of a state from the idea of a nation. Now, you can see exactly where I'm going with this, can't you? So a nation state is what normally most people live in. Like, most countries are nation states. So there's a national ethnic group, a majority at least, and the state that they have constructed and operate and is conformable to their sensibilities. And if you apply reason only to the formation of the state, if it's only a rational state, then effectively it will destroy the connection that the nation has to that state, which means that every component becomes interchangeable. There's no historical continuity. It becomes something divorced from that which sustains it. And this is dangerous. And I've been thinking about this a lot myself, because I haven't even finished this train of thought, but he kind of jumped the gun on it for me. But there's no particular reason that there should be anything if you're just having a rational state, other than a self-sustaining state apparatus that maintains itself from whatever is underneath it. And that's concerning, because we didn't... That's new, that's revolutionary, and that really does speak to the end of nations, not just countries, nations. And so the way he ended that, I was just like, David, you are singing from... You are speaking my language, man. Singing from the same song sheet here. And he is genuinely one of my favourite experts at this point. Anyway, I'll leave a link in the description to it. It's totally worth your time. And I'll play you now the Sky News clip that I forgot to play in the live stream yesterday. Because, again, it's just really good.
It's hard not to feel sorry and angry about what's happening in the British Parliament. Sorry that a Prime Minister who finally wants to make Brexit a reality is doing it so tough, and angry that the Parliament is totally obstructing the democratically expressed will of the people. Whatever your view on Brexit, as you know, I supported it from the outset, whatever your view, there was a referendum, the biggest vote in British history, and the people's choice, 52% to 48%, was to leave the European Union, despite a ferocious and indeed dishonest campaign by the establishment to stay. But because the establishment lost out, they've now done everything they can to thwart the people's decision becoming a reality, and done everything they can to engineer another vote in the hope they get the decision they wanted all along. Now, that's not how democracy works, or should work, if we even want to call it democracy at all. You don't get to keep forcing the people to vote until you get the outcome you want. That's called a tyranny. And Britain, and Europe too, have had a pretty bloody history dealing with tyranny. And the establishment here should remember it's usually them who come off second best, indeed sometimes without their heads. We all know that Theresa May's government first said that no deal was better than a bad deal. We all know that parties claiming to back Brexit won about 80% of the vote at the last election. We all know that the Parliament voted overwhelmingly to trigger the lengthy leave process. Yet overnight, with a bill to ban a no-deal Brexit passed, and with Boris Johnson's bill for an election failing to get the required two-thirds majority because of sneaky tactical abstentions by Labor, it's hard to know what will happen next. My instinct is that once the Lords sign the bill to ban a no-deal Brexit into law, Labor will then back an election on October 14. But putting the specifics of the Brexit issue to one side, what this sorry episode has just highlighted, not just to Brits, but anyone living in a similar democracy around the world, is how aggressively those in power can conspire against the voter to stop happening what they don't want to accept.